This is the home of Coda, our 6-month-old gargoyle gecko. It's a fully bioactive vivarium we've spent the last few months creating. It features multiple caves, plenty of foliage for Coda to hide, a cleanup crew, an automated misting system, and everything else a gargoyle gecko could wish for. The process of creating it was extremely fun, but also demanded a lot of time, research, and patience. But it was all so worth it, and we're going to show it to you. Our journey began with gathering as much information as we could. There are already hundreds of videos about New Caledonian gecko enclosures. However, a lot of people claim opposing things. So we did what any sane person would do and search Reddit for help. This is where we found even more conflicting information. A lot of people seem to use chiffleras in their enclosures. However, after looking a bit deeper, safe to say we had a lot of research to complete. Once that was out of the way, it was time to build. There are plenty of enclosure size recommendations. We chose to go with 60 by 60 by 45. We found a used Exoterra online and decided to complete a water test to make sure there were no leaks. For the back wall, we decided not to buy something pre-made and instead made our own. Structurally, our back wall is made from 4 cm wide XPS foam. Before getting into any designing, we cut the pieces to size and made sure they fit snug inside the enclosure. We left gaps at the top for cables and at the bottom for the substrate. Of course, we didn't want a yellow back wall. But before we could add any color or texture, we marked the areas we wanted to keep flat for our cork bark pieces after playing around with their placement. This made it easier to attach them later. To add more texture, we glued leftover XPS on with aquarium-safe silicone. We also carved into the foam with a metal brush to add grooves, making it look more natural. As you can see, we tried to take transitions between pieces into account as well. Then, we quickly vacuum everything clean before moving on. Flex tile adhesive is perfect as a first sealing layer for XPS. It's cheap, easy to find, and inert once cured. We followed the instructions on the box and added 2 layers, a thin one first, then a thicker one. For the second layer, we mixed in a bit of pigment to darken it slightly. We let the tile adhesive cure for 48 hours. We used some plain acrylic binder mixed with the same pigment to shade the cured tile adhesive. After everything dried, we sanded down parts of the surface to make it look more natural. This is what the back wall currently looks like. It might be helpful to quickly mention that we sealed the backside about a third of the way up to protect the XPS that partially sits in the substrate. We then roughed up a grid pattern on the back where we applied the same aquarium-safe silicone, using the supports underneath while it cured. Next up was the pond foam. It's solvent-free and should be inert when cured. We added a plant holder using it, and after curing for 24 hours, we trimmed it down by hand and with a knife to add shape. We made sure not to go overboard as this stuff expands significantly. We sealed this with tile adhesive too. To make sure the back wall was fully watertight, we used 2-part epoxy resin. We made sure to tape off the cork bark and expose parts of the enclosure. Then we applied 2 layers, following the instructions. We let this cure for 7 days. To remove some of the shine, we sanded it down with 800 grit sandpaper and gave the entire enclosure a final spray down. Next was the substrate layer. We added a pond filter mat first, leaving space at the front for some leakup balls. For drainage, we didn't want to make a hole in the glass of the enclosure. We instead opted for a manual drain. Into the filter foam, we added a drainage pipe with notched edges so we could siphon out water if needed. A cap allows us to close this drain and add substrate on top. We pre-soaked the leca for 24 hours so it wouldn't steal moisture from the substrate. To keep the substrate and the filter layer separate, we added a thin sheet of pond liner. We glued the drainage pipe onto the liner as well using cyanacrylate superglue, which is safe for pets. For the substrate mix, we avoided cocoa fiber and activated charcoal because of impaction risks. Instead, we used a 60-40 mix of organic topsoil and sphagnum moss, which is what we're rehydrating here. It took quite a bit to get a nice thick 8 to 10 centimeter layer. We just kept making more until we had enough, also filling our planter pots at the top. To avoid bringing in pests with the plants, we washed everything thoroughly and soaked them in a very low concentration hydrogen peroxide solution. We quarantined the plants for 2 to 4 weeks before planting. We added an Asplenium antiquum, similar to the bird's nest fern.
Okay.
2 types of peperomia, Peperomia napoli night and Peperonia rotunfolia. A Hoya near the heat lamp where it stays a bit drier. A Calathea hybrid. Some spider fern and some bromeliads you'll see in later clips. We went into the forest to gather some dried oak and maple leaves. We made sure to boil and bake these. On top of the substrate, we added a thin layer to feed the springtails and isopods. Since we couldn't get a hold of our cleanup crew at our local pet stores, we went online and ordered some white dwarf isopods and Fulsomia candida springtails. When they arrived in the mail, we made sure every single one of them made it into the enclosure. Let's quickly go over our enclosure setup. For lighting, we added an Arcadia Jungle Dawn and a compact UVB in an Exoterra compact top. We control these using a smart switch to emulate a day and night cycle. We also added a heat lamp. Our room gets relatively cold. We control it using an Inkbird thermostat that makes sure the basking spot doesn't get too warm. As a backup, we added a smart thermometer in there too that can turn off a smart switch in case enclosure overheats. We can overlook everything from our smartphone. At nighttime, we can watch with our IR camera. For the misting system, we chose not to go with a big name like Mist King. Instead, we chose a modular system from a German supplier. They have a lot of spare parts, good variety, and decent prices. We attached the nozzles to the mesh top of our enclosure using a homemade wedge. After months of work, our little guy Coda could finally move in. We hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a like and a comment. Let us know what you think. Until the next one. Peace.